Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Bob Mendelsohn, and this is the Bob's Your Uncle podcast. Thanks for joining me today for episode 4.6, that's season 4, episode 6, where Deborah Fuller from the University of Washington comes back to share much more about viruses and whom can we trust anyway. A great interview. Stay tuned. You can now find us and comment to us wherever you get your podcasts. Tell us what matters to you, what triggers your joy, what bothers you in the world. Let us know. We'll see where the Spirit leads us. Wherever you are just now, whether you're out for your evening constitutional, or you're here in Australia, or back in the United States with friends, or all by yourself with your headset on, hey, wherever you are, thanks for joining us these 18 minutes. Of note, the opinions are strictly my own and those of my guests.
But I do know that I love you, and I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
On this date in history, the 24th of October, in 1861, the first transcontinental telegram was sent via the telegraph in the United States, effectively bringing to an end the Pony Express. In 1945, the Charter for the United Nations, the world's premier international organization, established at the end of World War II to maintain world peace and friendly relations among nations, entered into force this day in 1945. In 1992, the Toronto Blue Jays defeated the Atlanta Braves to become the first team not based in the United States to win the World Series. And for our continuing study of viruses today, in 1632, Dutch microscopist Antony van Leeuwenhoek, who became the first to observe bacteria and protozoans, was born. And that's the historical marker of the week. We now return to our interview with Dr. Deborah Fuller from the University of Washington, a virologist, loves her study of vaccines. She was the go-to woman on Bloomberg television during the pandemic, COVID-19, and I'm privileged to have met her with my wife when we were in Turkey in August. She's got just so much to share with us, especially about trust. So we rejoined the interview for this part 2 of 2 with Deborah Fuller. Professor of Microbiology at the University of Washington, Associate Director of Research at the Washington National Primate Research Center, Director of Virology and Immunology Core.
For COVID.
It's pretty phenomenal. I'm thinking of Galileo, I'm thinking of Edison, and what kind of machinations they had to carry on and deal with in their day.
Exactly. You know, there's always naysayers in the world. I remember when the first vaccine, or the history of the first vaccine that was ever developed, was smallpox, and against smallpox. And there is this artist rendering of the first anti-vaxxers came about with the first vaccine that was ever developed. And they, made some claims that if you take this vaccine, because the vaccine was actually initially developed from cowpox, right? They took like some, material from the from cowpox and actually injected that into people, and that would protect you from smallpox. And it was really a discovery by a British scientist, Edward Jenner, who observed that milkmaids who would work, milk the cows would get all these sort of, nodules on their hands, but they were resistant to smallpox. They would never get sick with smallpox. So he hypothesized that they must, whatever they're getting from this cowpox must be protecting them from smallpox. So he did a lot of observation, then actually did what today would be an unethical experiment. He actually took one of I think one of his maid's children and inoculated the kid with cowpox, and then later, a few weeks later, came and actually injected smallpox into the kid, and then actually saw that the kid was protected. And that was the very first vaccine that was ever developed. It spread worldwide. Smallpox was a horrible epidemic back in those days in the 1800s, and so pretty soon people started to adopt it and use it to be able to vaccinate themselves against smallpox. And now today, of course, we eradicated smallpox, but back in the 1800s, the anti-vaxxers emerged, and they said, well, if you get injected with this, you're going to start growing cow parts out of your, and they had pictures of people growing udders and cow ears and things like that. And there were people who really believed that, when I saw that picture, I remember thinking, that is so outrageous that people can kind of, where the people's minds can go, that they actually kind of imagine that sort of thing. But then during COVID and all the anti-vax things that came up, the fantasies that people came up with as to what mRNA vaccines are going to do, that there's a microchip in there, and and Bill Gates is going to run the world, something like that. There were some outrageous things that were going on, and there was a lot of people falling for that. It was just astounding to me, the kind of fake news that is out there, surrounding science like that.
So
it's a challenge.
5G and cow parts are kissing cousins. Hey,
Exactly.
let me back up to what most of us who are not in your sphere and not in your world, but most of us learned in, say, junior high school science classes, the scientific method, very simplified, make an hypothesis, conduct lab work, including experimentation, observe, and then make a conclusion. Honestly, would everyone who is a true scientist reach the same conclusions after any lab work? What other influences are on researchers who are called upon to peer review lab work that might cause them to reach different conclusions?
Yeah, there can be. So the scientific process, when we think about one person coming up with a hypothesis and then testing it, just like you said, and other people coming up with other hypotheses. But one of the things we have to remember, that science builds on the building bricks of scientists before you, okay? And so your hypothesis often is formed not just by what you're kind of, oh, well, that's kind of odd, I wonder what causes that, but because there's other prior work published and out there from other researchers who have reported on things similar or related to that you can then kind of pull into your hypothesis. And one of the things about science is that it is constantly checking itself, right? So if I do an experiment and I test a hypothesis and I come up with a conclusion, I publish that paper, it gets peer reviewed. Did she have the right controls in there? Did she ask the right questions? Is her conclusions in line with what the data, or is it, a little bit too speculative or pushing the envelope too far? I mean, you get a lot of, pushback on that. But the additional thing that happens is that other scientists then, once your work is published, will take your work and try to build on that. And if that science isn't sound, then you can't build on it, right? So it's sort of self-correcting in many ways that, sometimes you hear about, people may have, some science has been, there was some dogma that just got, and some new research has come out that, refutes that. And that can happen too. And sometimes what happens is that, as science progresses, we develop new tools to study, whether it's a cell or a bacteria or virus. For example, the development of being able to just sequence, DNA, or to be able to, microscopes, things like that. Every time you get a new technology developed, you can interrogate the question even further. And sometimes that additional interrogation will refute information from before or add to it, and that helps to continually refine the data. But what makes me believe in the science and then the integrity of it, and that ultimately it's self-correcting, is that I'm building on these bricks, and these bricks most of the time when I test my hypothesis are panning out to be correct, right? So it's like, somebody gives you a direction somewhere and you get to point B or whatever, okay, and then you have to give that same direction to somebody and say, now you get to point C, but you have to use the old stuff to get to point B, and you still are able to get there. Then that validates that the directions that came from point A to point B must be true, right? So it's self-correcting. It's kind of cleans itself all the time. So, and it's not always right. I mean, there's always can be things that maybe, based on the technology of the day or whatever, you reach a certain conclusion because you're blinded to certain aspects of it. But, another experiment might come around where you're able to unveil that and reveal more truth, about your discovery.
A lot of repeatability is crucial in peer review.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love it.
Absolutely.
Besides science and the University of Washington, what else makes Deb Fuller enjoy life these days? Do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, I do have a lot. I'm an athlete. I love sports, so I'm on a master swim team. So I do a lot of swimming. I started when I was 8 years old swimming, and then I actually quit for a while so that I could become a runner. But then, as you get older, your knees give out. So I went back to swimming, and and then my husband and I, we love to bicycle. So we both have, spend our weekends often just exploring the beautiful Pacific Northwest on our bicycles. As you know, we love to travel, and meet new people and experience new cultures and discover new things. So lots of things that that we just enjoy doing. The other thing I like to do is actually learn new languages. So I don't know how many languages I can possibly learn in a lifetime, but if I can add another one, I'll constantly try to learn new ones, so all the time. So right now I'm trying to learn Chinese because I decided to kind of step out of my romantic language domain and try to learn an entirely different, it's not even our alphabet. So yeah.
Great. I'll try to convince you to learn Hebrew. Okay.
There we go.
Lightning round. First choices: Seattle Seahawks or Seattle Mariners?
Oh, the Seahawks.
Domestic or international travel?
Oh, international.
Cats or dogs?
Cats for me.
Coca-Cola or Pepsi?
Neither. I don't drink either. A good glass of wine is always my choice.
Perfect for breakfast. Okay. West Coast or East Coast in the U.S.?
I love the West Coast.
Agatha Christie or John Grisham?
John Grisham.
Well, there you go. Hey, scientifically, did you like the book Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus? Did you read that?
I did not. No, I was not. Chemistry wasn't my thing. I thought I was going to flunk out of my major because I really did not like chemistry. And, it's funny, I married a chemist, of course, but, which is good because, we complement one another. But chemistry was a struggle for me. So it was never my thing.
I'll have to ask Jim if he liked the book. I loved it. It's becoming a Netflix series or something.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It was a great read for me. I enjoyed it. Is there anything else you want to tell the Bob's Your Uncle international community?
Yeah. Get your COVID booster. And we have obviously with the fall here, of course, in Australia, it's actually opposite. It's opposite. I want to let you know that actually what happens in Australia influences what happens in the United States. When we develop vaccines, did you know that? And then what happens in the United States influences the vaccine that you end up in Australia for flu. Okay, because the seasons are exactly opposite. So flu season's always in the fall when it starts to get cold. And so we study what viruses are actually going on in Australia's fall. And depending on that sequence, that's then the vaccine that we make for the United States for our fall. And then the reverse happens. So a little bit of trivia for you that we collaborate. That's another international collaboration that's always done. Yeah.
Great. Deb, thanks so much. What a pleasure to have met you in Turkey and your family.
Yeah.
Terrific. We had a great couple of days touring together and learned a lot about ancient civilizations and
We did.
up to the Ottomans. No, it was a joy to be together with you. Thanks for your time there. And thanks for your time with me today. This is going to be a double episode. There's no way I can trim this down to a single. What you have to tell us is so important. I'm going to make sure that everybody hears this. And so thanks again. Have a great autumn there and the rest of 2023.
All right. It was my pleasure. Really enjoyed doing that.
What do you think about all this? Why don't you write me, bobmendo@aol.com, or comment on an Instagram or TikTok to me. I'd love to know what you're thinking. There's been so much difficulty, pain, anxiety, angst as we watch the television news. Some of our friends, some of our colleagues living and working in Israel, we've been watching and regretting that we don't have the power to go in and change things. Oh, maybe if this had happened or that had happened, it would all be different. Friends, what are you thinking about in regards to Gaza? What are you thinking about in regards to global sympathy for Palestine or Israel? Would you write me, bobmendo@aol.com? I'll be glad to talk with you about it. We've all got feelings. Let's deal with those. And let's see how we can make the world a better place. Every week we read from a portion of the bestseller, the number one bestseller of all time, the Bible. And today's no different. From the Gospel of John, the words of Yeshua himself. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Don't let your heart be troubled, don't let it be afraid. I'll hope to speak with you next Tuesday. Until then, from me, Bob Mendelsohn, when things seem bleak or uncertain, look up to God. He's in his heaven, and Bob's your uncle. Shalom from Sydney.